Hi, welcome to this video on how to use status and classification inside of RENXT. So one of the things that Razor's Edge is great about tracking inside of the system is this tile called prospect management. Whenever you go to a constituent's record, you may find it lower down in the list. And as a reminder, you can always drag and drop these tiles. So I've pulled my tile for prospect management all the way to the top. And you will see here it mentions the current status and what the classification is. These two fields can be used to help track prospects in your pipeline. So as an organization, there is likely a group of people that you've identified who could be, major higher level donors to your organization. Many organizations will also track the lower level or more annual donors as well, just to easily find and tag those people in the system. As part of prospect management, you typically say that prospects will move through a status or a stage where we've identified them, we're cultivating them towards a gift, we solicit them or ask them for a gift, and then we steward the gift. And that cycle goes on and on and on until infinity, so that we can solicit, and obtain a gift from our donors. So you can track that type of information in the status area of Razor's Edge. So whenever you're on the prospect management tile and you go to edit status, it will bring up the status table, and this can all be customized, and you can fill in and create whatever statuses you would like to use or your organization has maybe been using, but it just hasn't necessarily been put into the database. Other popular statuses are qualification. There's other ones like perpetual stewardship, where someone really has given their last gift, and so we're keeping them in a separate stewardship stage just to know that we're really not going to ask them again. There are other statuses that can be used, such as not a prospect right now, not a prospect ever, or disqualified. So there's a lot of flexibility that you can use here to really help when you're looking at your prospect pool determine where are our prospects in that cycle, in that process of we've identified them to we've actually closed a gift. Where are they in that pipeline? And that really helps us when we're looking globally at all of our prospects, ensure that we have the right number of people in each status, so that whenever we're planning for next year's asks, we always want to have some proportion, whichever is determined by your organization, of prospects in identification, however many we have in cultivation, because you always want your portfolio to be a mix of these, so that we're always doing actions of identification, we're always doing cultivation activities, we're always soliciting, and we're always stewarding someone. So if you were to select a status, you can enter a start date and put a comment if you like. As a note, these comments do not appear in database view, and you currently can't query on them. But it is helpful whenever you're looking at the status history. You would see this in the list inside of RENXT. If I go to change the status again to cultivation, so we can say cultivating toward major gift ask, and that will again show in the history. So that's really helpful, not only for someone currently managing the donor or the prospect, but also for those that may come behind you to kind of see the history that was happening. So whenever you first log into the prospect management area and you're first setting it up for the very first time, there is a little sprocket over here where you can go into the settings and you can basically say, okay, for all of my statuses for identification, how long as an organization do we want to say someone should be in identification? So if that's 30 days, 60 days, 80 days, 90 days, you can tell it on the back end of the system that identification is 60 days. If solicitation, we say, okay, typically we don't want anyone to be in solicitation longer than 6 months, then you can set that up. The great thing about that is it will tell you how long this prospect has been in that status. So that's really where more of the prospect management piece comes into play, where if someone's managing the health and the quality and the movement of the portfolio, they'll be able to easily see here, as well as on a dashboard, because this is something that can be pulled into a dashboard as well. They'll be able to see how long prospects have been in various stages. The last piece is the classification. And this really can, again, be designed however is helpful for your organization. In our test database, we have it set up to basically kind of divide based on the type of donor or prospect that it is. Another way that I've seen this used is more of a ranking or a tier. So if you've looked at your prospects and have applied your personal knowledge, how much you think you're going to ask, you've looked at their ratings from multiple different sources, and you've determined they're going to be in the best tier, or tier 1. So you could have tiers in here where you could easily pull basically who are all of my, really good prospects. And that can be a variety of, as mentioned, data points going into it. Versus major donor could just mean we flag everyone as a major donor based on the wealth rating. So there's different ways that you can do it. One thing that I will mention about classification that sometimes can trip organizations up is that you can only be one classification. So if you decide to put planned giving and major giving and annual giving, for example, in this table, you can only have them as one. So many times a major donor is also a planned giving donor, or even an annual donor can be a planned giving donor prospect. So that's the only kind of caveat here, which is why I really like to use a tier system versus classifying them in this way, since they can be more than one type of prospect. And then in using, opportunities or maybe some attributes, you can classify your donors in this way, maybe in a different format, so that you can more easily put them into more than one category. Versus if they're really a tier 1, they could be a tier 1 major and planned, but I know I have all of my tier 1s in one bucket. So those are some examples of how you can use classification and cultivation. It's really for your organization what is going to help you when you're pulling reports and trying to assess the health and robustness and movement in your portfolios. Whatever is going to help you the best. And to update this, you're going to go to settings and tables. And that's where you can customize what is in the status and the classification dropdown. So if you go into tables and you type in status, it is going to be the prospect status. So this is where you can alter this. I will say putting a number in front of them can be helpful if you're using this information in spreadsheets and you find that whenever you sort, it's much easier to put them in order of how the statuses happen, because it may not always necessarily be in alphabetical order. So for example, if I have a status in here of qualification, if I were to do these statuses alphabetically, qualification is going to end up basically between C and S. But realistically, qualification is happening after identification. So if you put a number in front of these, it does help whenever you're sorting in the database and also in a spreadsheet. It does help to keep them in the order of how the process actually works. So that's the video on prospect status and classification. Hope this was helpful.